there was a couple of years ago, I said, I don't think I have served the purpose that I was put here for yet. I don't know what it was, and I think this might be it. But at the end of the day, you should not die with anything creatively left inside of you. Hey, I'm DJ Jazzy Jeff, and I'm here with Sweetwater at the studio. I want to say maybe about 3 months ago, I was talking to somebody, and I came out and I said, I have a subwoofer in my kitchen. I have a sound bar, I have television, a sound bar, and a subwoofer in my kitchen. And I used to be very apprehensive to tell people something like that. I have speakers in every room in my house. And it was about 6 months ago that I realized that sound is so important to me that I want to hear sound the best that it can be whenever I listen to it. And I say that now unapologetic, because there are people that don't understand. Sometimes being a gear junkie, they think it's overkill. But if you're always looking for that perfect sound, trust me, I appreciate where we are now that I can go to a plugin and get some of the most amazing sounds. There were times that you would buy one keyboard for one sound. And you're spending a couple $1,000s for that one keyboard. But to get that one sound that could be that magic on that recording, it's all worth it. So I am unapologetically a gear junkie. Some of the best musicians and producers and friends that I met in the music store, because you would go to the music store and spend hours. You didn't necessarily have to buy something. You wanted to go and look at what the new gear was and listen to it and play it and make your wish list, and it was camaraderie in those music spaces. And when the stores started to kind of go away and that feeling left, Sweetwater was the one that almost maintained that feeling online. Them giving you a salesperson that stays your sales. My salesperson is my same salesperson from the first time I bought something from Sweetwater. And that one-on-one relationship is key. Incredible. I could totally understand how anybody who loves gear would love to work at Sweetwater. That so many of the people that were there were musicians and producers and having that conversation. It's, if you're a gearhead and you meet another gearhead, y'all could talk for hours. You know what? Like, I've always been somebody that anything that I heard on a record, I wanted to be able to do. So when I heard an instrument that I didn't know what the instrument was, I wanted to find out what the instrument was. I wanted to buy the instrument, even if I didn't know how to play it. I wanted to be able to almost replicate anything that I heard on records. So early on, I've always been into equipment and, drum machines and keyboards. And, as all of those things changed from, pretty much a SB12 to SB1200, I had 909s, 808s, 606, 727s, 707s. And then you started getting into the MPC, which was more of the sequencing drum machine. And that kind of took me down a whole different rabbit hole from just a machine to now I have a machine that controls all of these keyboards and things in the studio. But I really wanted my own place to make my records. It was funny. I was actually having a conversation with Will, and I told him something that he never really knew. I had a really, really bad experience in the studio with us recording our second album. That I had an engineer that I actually did scratches on a song, and I kind of wanted the scratches to lay behind the beat a little bit for feel. And the engineer told me, you should do those over. And I said, nope, they are laying exactly where I want it. And he was like, I really think you should do them over. And I was like, listen, I purposely put them there. And he pushed play and he pushed record and looked at me and said, oops, and he erased it. And we got into it after that, but I was never able to replicate those scratches again. And I can't listen to that record till this day. And I told Will that, because he never knew that story, but I told him that that was the day that I decided that I wanted to have my own space so nothing like that could ever happen. And he was blown away. Like, I never knew. Like, my initial goal was I want to be able to record myself. I don't ever want someone to do that to me again. You know, I started to Touch of Jazz and got a bunch of guys who could play instruments and could produce, and started going in. Like, we didn't, I think one of the most amazing things that people didn't know is we never had an engineer at a Touch of Jazz. We had all fake engineers. But that was responsible for all of the Jill records and the Music Soul Child records, that we actually did those records without an engineer. It was a collection of us that, you know, I looked at it like, I got this space and we're going to figure out how all of this stuff works. The first console I bought was a DDA console. I want to say it was like a DDA DMR 12, and I bought a MTR 90 2-inch machine, and had a bunch of compressors and, you know, tube techs and pool techs and, you know, whatever I could get my hands on that I knew were studio staples. And we started recording, you know, pretty much the third album. You know, it started from the third album and went all the way, you know, all the way out to the end of Will and I recording to, you know, it transferred over to the Jill Scotts and the Music Soul Childs. What was funny is we got to, I want to say, our third album, and some of the producers on Jive that would come in and help us with the record realized what happened from the second album to the third album. Like, I came in with a drum machine on the second album, and I came in with a rack of samplers and keyboards and all the rest of this. And one of the producers was like, "You're really into this, aren't you?" And I was like, "Yeah." And it was funny because he said, don't ever tell anybody that I told you this. He said, "How much is your recording budget?" And I said, $250,000. He said, "Take $100,000 and buy yourself a console and a tape machine and record your own record. I'm not telling you to mix it, but I'm telling you to record all of your songs." And I understood what he meant, that, you know, that it was kind of like, you know what, I'm going to take the money that I would be giving to another studio and I'm going to buy a board and a tape machine and we're going to just start recording. And I knew I was on to something because the executives of the label came down to my first studio to see it, because I think they wanted to make sure we weren't recording on a 4-track. But I also think that once they walked in and saw that I had a 64 channel board and a 2-inch tape machine, that I was really serious about this. Wherever I could get my gear, you know, and then over the years you had a lot of gear missing, gear stolen, you know, and you would just try to get it, especially moving from studio to studio. You know, I tried to retain as much gear as I could until I ended up moving and putting the studio of my dreams in the house, because that way I knew none of this gear is going to leave. I moved, when I finally moved out of the studio and put the studio in my basement, you know, it was great. I had a chance to relocate to a much bigger house, a lot more land. And it's funny that one of the hardest decisions for me to move had more to do with the studio. That it was kind of like, okay, I got a studio and I like the way this studio is. You can't guarantee that the next place you're going to have that same success. So in moving, I wanted to put the studio back in the basement because I enjoy when my wife and kids would come in the studio. And I have a detached guest house and garage that my wife said, "You really should put it over there." I don't know what I call this, because this is an extension of the studio. This started off being my own personal setup, and it just grew because it was a small setup, you know, with a Mac Mini and a couple of plugins, and I can't work like that. So it just kept growing and growing and growing. It grew to the point that what we're standing in front of is the actual podcast station, you know. Dan, my streaming engineer, and he's an amazing builder. He built me a podcast table. He angled it for camera purposes that we can probably fit 3 people on each side. I bought the Rode Podcaster 2 from Sweetwater, which is amazing because I basically bring my computer and I plug it up and open up my DAW, and all of the tracks are already separated that we can just record. And then we shoot, 3 cameras, a center camera and two side cameras, and, my backdrop of my vintage pool tech, and it's 4 mics and headphones, to have great conversations. So I have a podcast studio, which is here. I have all of my storage of turntables, my Rain 1 setup, my CDJ setup, another turntable setup, or 2 turntable setups over there, that when people come and whatever gear that they want, I try to have whatever they need. Not everybody uses the same gear. Some people like CDJs, some people like Nexus 800 mixer, a S11, a Rain mixer. We got it all to try to accommodate for people to come. Walking over here from the podcast, this is where we get to the part of the DJ streaming section, that I have a rack with a lot of mixers and a lot of turntables, just kind of some of the history stuff, but also just for gear when people want to come in, depending on what they need. There are records everywhere. I mean, what would you expect? These are my 45s that I have yet to open. I have 45 boxes under here. I have 45 boxes under here. We walk closer over to the streaming section. Another thing that Dan built, he built me 45 shelves that I have 45s all in here. So if I ever decided to just do a 45 set, whether it be a stream or even in real life, I have all of my records to choose from. This is all my backdrops, with Sideshow. Shout out to Sideshow for the incredible, and my brother Justin Boer with all of the hip hop statues. I was honored that, he sent me these. This is pretty much who I am and what I do. And this is the backdrop of me streaming. And this is pretty much my main setup of me streaming, my turntables, my mixer. It's a 4 camera setup. I have an overhead for a shot, a direct front shot, a side shot. I have a GoPro shot, which is my action shot. I have a little Mackie mixer that allows me to hear and also send it to the streamer, which is, completely over there. I have my speaker setups, which is really loud, which also came from Sweetwater, which I really want them louder. I really want concert sound. Like, if I want to feel the music as I'm playing it, even if it's on a stream. So we walk further over here, and this is basically my stream setup. Shout to EVGA for the incredible PC, streaming PC, when when the pandemic happened and we started streaming. The good people at EVGA reached out and said, hey, we see what you're doing. We want to know if we can help you out and build you a PC that will be appropriate for streaming, which was a little weird because, I'm a Mac guy, but I understand that the streaming culture, is based off of the gaming culture, which is based off of a PC platform. So, we end up, getting that set up. They dialed it in for us perfectly. We already had the cameras. Shout out to Roland. I have my VR, VR4 switcher. I have a smaller V1 switcher when we have extra cameras. This is Dan's setup. This we streamed earlier and I raided over to someone and he raided over to someone. So this is just a continuous stream, for the day. This is pretty much command central for all things streaming. But what I realized, I used to tour 160 dates a year, and about 120 of them were international dates. So I had a really, really heavy touring schedule. And I got so sick that I knew there is no way that I'm leaving this house for at least 2 years. This is so bad. Even I knew there was a lot of people that didn't understand how bad it was. As sick as I was like, yep, this is it. So what are we going to do? and that was a revelation that I had. And I started streaming for me. I started streaming because this is what I do. I've always played music for people. I don't know whenever you're going to see me again, especially at that time. I was like, I don't know what's going to happen with the world. So if we going out rocking. So I just started playing music, and I was shocked at the healing power. D Nice helped me when I was sick. This was when he first started streaming. And I remember looking on my phone and seeing it and hearing some of the songs that he played, and it really made you feel better. And I was like, yo, this is a thing. So, we started streaming. My wife, who's super incredible, after about 3 weeks of streaming, the Amazon truck pulled up, and it was boxes of lights. It was tripods. Like, it was literally, she was like, listen, if this is what we're going to do, we're going to double down right. Let's make it look right. She would dress the backdrop up for it to look good. And we started playing music. The joy that I had was I had zero constraints. There wasn't, you have to play for a dance floor. There wasn't, you have to play this type of music. And I am a music junkie. So I started going down rabbit holes that I could never do in a club. And people were losing it, because it was kind of like, yo, I don't really get a chance to see Jeff play like this. I started to understand that grown-ups don't really want to go to the club. Grown-ups went to the club because it was the only place that they were going to hear the music or DJs that they really liked. And this was a shift. It's kind of like, wait, a DJ that I really, really like is in my living room. And I started to realize that there are more people who don't want to go to the club that do want to go to the club. That I can either go to this place and play for 2,000 people here, or I can stand in one spot and play for 100,000 people around the globe. It made me feel like I felt when I first started making music, of not knowing what any of this equipment is, but you're so excited that you're dying to learn. And we just, we're at the point now, we 10, 12 cameras and lights, and we have figured it out. We have a portable, streaming PC that, when Will was doing his book tour, we went to Miami and just set everything up, and he's just kind of like, I don't understand. You just came in here and set a TV station up and streamed and left. We streamed from South by, but it started a whole movement, that there are people, we've had some amazing guests, from Kid Capri to Grandmaster Flash, to Shortcut to Scratch Bastard. As much as I still enjoy going out and being in real life, I don't think I'm ever going to give up the streaming thing, especially, as we're coming into the colder months. People are kind of like, listen, Friday night, let me get a bottle of something and let me cook some food and invite some friends over, and I'm going to have the party of my life. And if I can bring them world-class DJs and entertainment, in the comforts of their living room, they love it. And, like I said, I have a bunch of records. These are all hip-hop 12 inches and, of all sorts, and tons of drum machines. This is actually my SB12 and my 950 that I made a lot of me and Will's first, second, and third album on. The ASR 10, VP 9000. These are a lot of the classic drum machines that I used to love. My Roland MV 8000, Akai drum machines, everywhere. This is my 2-inch machine that when I first opened my studio, I got this. A little secret, I wanted to turn this into a refrigerator, and all of the analog gear fanatics freaked out and yelled at me. So we're just gonna keep this as a 2-inch. It will not turn into a refrigerator, thank God. But more drum machines, my Machine Studio, MPC Renaissance and, records. And then I have my private studio setup right here that, I kind of wanted everything all in one. So I have my turntable stuff, that if I needed to add any kind of cuts and scratches on anything, I can do. I have another Mac Studio, my Apollos, my Mac DSP, my SSL Fusion to get my sounds. It's drum machines and drum sounds and hard drives everywhere and a bunch of vintage synths, from my OB6 to my Prophet to, a 73 Rhodes, my Sub 37 and my MPC and speakers, and I'm in Candyland basically. This is Candyland, and I enjoy it because I can come in here and basically whatever mood or emotion that I have, I can get it out in music. If I'm angry, I can make a bunch of angry stuff. This is my angry synth right here. This allows me to get my anger out. This right here, this is joy and happiness. So however I'm feeling is however it comes out. I have another keyboard set up that when we do live sessions that, a lot of the musicians can play. I have a drum set up. I have a gobo to kind of protect some of the drum sound. I get an amazing drum sound from my drums right here. I wanted an all-inclusive setup. What I realize now that a lot of producers have their setup and they have drums right there and they're recording their live drums, right in the room. So I'm trying to, pretty much mimic that if I feel it, I can go over there and I can bang out some live drums, or I can bang them out on the keyboard or on the drum machine. However you feel, I want to be able to get the idea out as quickly as possible. And more records and, it's supposed to be like this. It's supposed to be stuff all over the place. I have records sitting here in a bag. I actually have a vinyl presser that I can cut my own vinyl. Not many people can say that they have that I can basically record a record, mix the record, master the record, and press it up on vinyl and give it to you. And I have that. It's sitting over here. It has some dust on it. I don't really know how to use it. I have a engineer friend of mine who cuts all of my vinyls, but I'm just happy to say, because one of the greatest joys is to be able to press your own record. So that's why I said that this is Candyland. I want this to be everything that I've ever wanted to do, and I have the capabilities to do it all from the comforts of my own home. I want to show you into the live room, just to show you that not only we also have a collection of drums and percussions and microphones and a nice sound booth to get really good drum sounds if I'm trying to do something live. So the only thing that I haven't done here yet is cut live strings, but that's coming. There's nothing that I can do. But I'm going through a period now that I feel like my creativity, I don't want my creativity to be tainted. So I'm really mapping out the outlet for all of this music that I have. I'm working on the album with Bob James right now. I'm working on the album with Rakim right now. I've finished the jazz album. I have a bunch of stuff that's done. I've been doing a lot of mixing, just really how I want my stuff to sound. And that was very important, that I was kind of like, if you care enough about how your stuff sounds, I implore people to go down the rabbit hole and try to figure out how to get the sound that you want. Now, if you don't have any desire, then you can go to an outside party for them to do that. But if you are somebody that has any interest in that, go down that rabbit hole, because, like I said, I make music and I mix music solely for the emotional part. the feeling part. I'm not trying to be super technical. I know what music did for me when I was really, really young. You know, the chord changes, the structure, the vamp outs, how you would run and turn the volume up as the song was fading, because it was magic that was going on when the song was going out. You wanted to know what was after the song played out. Those little emotions that I think, you know, anybody who loved music, you know, gravitated to, I'm trying to recreate that. And a lot of that is without industry structure. You know, I don't like the fact that someone, you know, there was a point in time that someone said your song had to be 3 minutes and 30 seconds, and now it's even shorter. I'm kind of like, well, what if I'm not getting my idea out in 3 minutes and 30 seconds? You know, I appreciate it when Parliament Funkadelic came out with Knee Deep. It was 15 minutes long, because that's how long they needed to prove that point. And that's what I want. You know, so, you know, I'm just trying to map out my outlet. I have zero issues with the music right now. You know, I had the chance over the past 2 years to really hone in the studio, the sound, and be really comfortable with what I'm doing and how I'm doing it, and just subtle tweaks, and just, you know, I'm always looking for a better way. I'm always looking for an easier way, a more creative way, or, you know, just a way that I can, the way that I can recreate whatever I have in my head, you know, without the hassle. So I am, you know, putting out music with my son, you know, which is beautiful. I'm streaming 2 times, maybe 3 times a week, which I love. I just started a podcast because there's so many people that come through here, and we have so many conversations that I'm kind of like, I don't ever record these conversations. And, you know, started a podcast. Grandmaster Flash was my first, guest on a podcast, and we have a bunch of people coming down before the end of the year. And it's really, you know, I'm looking at this like this is a production house, that I'm working on this album, and I have this DJ coming down, and I have to film this podcast, and then I have to finish this remix, and then I have to go and do this DJ date. You know, I am in a creative utopia right now.